If you are a McKinsey, BCG, or Bain consultant, most likely you already experienced some form of toxic situations or toxic relationship in your project work. It can be a toxic situation, a toxic relationship with your managers. It can be with partners. And it's very stressful. It's very difficult situation for consultants to handle. And also quite damaging. So if you don't manage it properly and if you leave it as is, of course, these toxic leaders will provide negative feedback on you, and then it will affect your career in a very badly way, in a very negative way. Okay, so that's why in this video I wanted to discuss why it happens, what are the underlying reasons of this situation to happen in the first place, practical steps you can do to improve it, try to recover from this situation, and then what you can do to prevent it from happening so it doesn't happen at all, so you don't find yourself in these difficult situations in the first place. And then at the end I will share one option or one action. I call it a nuclear option. Basically, it's an action that you can take in the most difficult, in most desperate situations when it becomes unbearable, and then you have to do something. So stay tuned, watch the video until the end, and then let's discuss it in more detail. But before we proceed, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Rustem Karymov. I'm a former associate partner at McKinsey. I worked at McKinsey for 9 years. Now, for already 2 years, I coach MBB consultants to improve their performance, to achieve success in their career, and become confident and stress-free consultants. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. Every week I share videos with practical advice on not just how to survive in MBB firms, but how to thrive and succeed. Don't forget to subscribe, click the like button, and leave your comments and ask your questions. Okay, now let's discuss a little bit what is the pain, how does it affect you, right? So when managers criticize you, sometimes it's a constructive criticism and it's good. But in toxic situations, this constructive criticism goes beyond normal kind of feedback, yeah, and then it becomes critical, it becomes snarky, it becomes personal. People get impatient, people get annoyed, and then that by itself is very unpleasant situation to be in. So that feedback hurts your confidence, damages your confidence, right? And then at some point it becomes impossible to do anything right. So it feels like anything you do is wrong. And then they exaggerate, they blow out of proportion your simple mistakes. But then the decent, meaningful work that you do, they just take it for granted and they don't recognize it, right? So basically what happens in that process, they develop this negative bias towards you, and then doesn't matter how hard you work, doesn't matter what you do, they will always find something to criticize. And the reason it stresses you out, so I want you to understand the mechanics behind it, the anatomy behind it, is that's how we wired as humans. We are social beings, right? And then years and years of evolution wired us in a way that we always we always kind of look for cues from our leaders in our tribe where we are now. And then if our leaders aren't happy with us, our stress system goes out of control, right? Just our stress goes through the roof. Because in prehistoric times, that meant that potential exile and then potential death out of community, out of the tribe that you are in, right? So that's why your mind sends you these alarms. This is not good. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. And that's why you feel all of that stress and anxiety because of that. And why it happens? What are the reasons for that? What are the causes for that? And usually there are two things should be in place. Two things should happen for you to find yourself in this situation, right? First one is high stress. It's actually not your stress, but the stress of your managers. So your manager should be under immense amount of stress. Something should happen in their life, in their work, that makes them sensitive to small things, to kind of small mistakes. That's one. Because if you think about it, normal people will not react that way to any working situation. Okay, it shouldn't happen. But then because something happened in their personal or work life, they just cannot control it, and then that stress manifests in weird ways. Okay, people handle stress in different ways, and then sometimes it has different, quite weird manifestations. Okay, so that's factor number one. And factor number two is loss of trust. Usually it's a performance thing. So you've done something, you made a mistake. Usually it's something in the beginning. Your manager asks you to do a simple thing. You misunderstood something, like you misunderstood the task, or you've done it not at the level they expected, or you missed the expectation. And that kind of, there was the first domino, right? And then at that time, people like, okay, so that's not a very good consultant. I cannot trust that consultant. And then they become more critical. They look at you with more attention. And if they look with more attention, they find something that you don't do well. And then it becomes like a domino, right? So it's one after another, after another, after another. And then in a few iterations like that, you find yourself in a very nasty, very bad situation. Okay? So that's what you need to understand, the mechanics, the anatomy of this, how it happens, and whether you have these two elements and what are those two elements specifically. Another important thing that you need to understand about toxic situations is that it has a spiral effect. Okay, so it's like a downward spiral. It starts with small things, with simple things, but then over time it's a vicious cycle, and then they escalate. They become like a bigger and stronger, and then after a few iterations, in a few weeks, the whole thing is not about specific thing that you work right now. It's accumulated negative emotions that people have, you actually as well, and your manager about that situation, and then every small thing now triggers a big reaction, overreaction to what it is actually, right? So I think that you need to understand, and the spiral is very simple. So you make a mistake, they criticize you, and because of that you react in a certain way. Either you kind of close yourself and then become defensive, or you kind of confront and become kind of defensive as well. Then that inevitably affects your confidence, right? Your motivation. And because your confidence, motivation drops, you become less proactive. You make more mistakes. Then you lose more trust, and then it just kind of repeats again and again. And final one, I think, like in terms of concepts and in terms of understanding the nature of this, at some point you also need to understand and accept that's a very difficult situation, okay? And often it's not recoverable. Sometimes it's not recoverable. Sometimes you just, if your relationship is broken with certain people, there is nothing you can do to change their mind, okay? And then once you accept that, once you say, okay, let's cut my losses, let's kind of wait until the project ends and then I start over, that also helps you to reduce the stakes of the situation. Because if you are in the early journey, early tenure of your consulting career, everything feels like life and death situation. And then you sometimes feel like, okay, it's done. I'm done. I gonna be fired because of that. It's actually not. So it's easy to kind of accept the negative case, and then from that bottom try to improve, right? So your internal pressure reduces. That's the beauty of consulting, right? So you work with different people. So if you didn't find a common language with a certain group of leaders, there are always some other people you can work with on another project, another practice, another location. So in that way, it's not end of the world. Compared to corporate world, where if your boss is not happy with you, most likely you stuck with that boss, and then probably you will leave soon, right? So because that's not recoverable. So that's what consulting gives you. It gives you some flexibility and choice with what people to work with. So that helps you a little bit to calm yourself down and then treat the situation with more rational mind rather than emotional mind. Now let's think about it, some practical ways how you can improve that situation. Okay, what you can do once you find yourself in this difficult relationship. So first one, I think a very important one is empathy, right? Apply your empathy to that situation. So what you need to understand is that, remember we discussed, your manager is going through some difficult situation, experiencing unbearable stress. Often your manager experiencing more stress than you experience, okay? And once you start seeing that situation from these lenses, sometimes you will see, okay, my manager is actually also struggling, and the way she or he behaves is because of that. Okay, let me not contribute to that. Let me not go with that kind of spiral, and then demonstrate my empathy to that person, understanding of what they are going through. And then that's how you break that cycle, okay? So how does it practically work? First of all, find what it is. Usually it's very visible. If you just kind of for a moment start observing what your manager do, what's happening, what they say, that source of stress will be usually super visible, right? It's either partners applying immense pressure on them and also being toxic to your manager. It's maybe sometimes something personal happened in their life, and then they are up for promotion, or they're struggling with performance issues as well. The client can apply pressure as well. Clients can be super difficult. Sometimes all of them at the same time happens to a manager. And then when you look at your manager with empathy, you are less likely to be reacting the way you react to the situation. Okay, and practically I like this approach. Is that sometimes I would try to voice over what they're experiencing, right? Show my empathy to them and say, look, I actually don't know how you're doing all of that. It's just so much. It's so unfair to you. You work so hard. I can see the partners are not really treating you fairly for what you do, or clients are not treating you fairly, or you're going through so much in your personal life, and now you also do this very difficult, complex project. I really admire what you do. Sometimes just saying this in the right moments will kind of snap out this person from that negative mindset, and then they realize, oh, it's actually my friend. It's not my foe. It's not my enemy. And then they sometimes just feel that connection with you, and it can change the dynamic of the whole conversation or whole relationship that you have. Okay, ideally if you help them, that would be even better with their struggles, but usually if you are a first year consultant, you can't do much. So that's why just demonstrating the empathy is already a big step. And also it snaps you out from your own negativity, because often consultants fall into that negative mindset. Oh, my manager is a bad person. He hates me or she hates me. They unfair. They want to damage me. They want to. You start seeing them as enemies as well, and then that's kind of also escalates, contributes to the toxic relationship, makes the spiral spin faster. The second one is it's one of my favorite. It's actually quite interesting psychological trick, and there is a saying like if you want someone like you, make them help you. Okay, it's a hugely counterintuitive. Like, we think that if we want to make people like, we try to help them. It's actually more effective to make people like you if they help you, because they become invested in your case or in your success, right? And yeah, in a toxic relationship, sometimes making a manager to help you is very hard because they are not in that mindset. But you can trick them, right? You can take a piece of feedback that they told you recently, something mundane, right? Some technical feedback. And then you can, in a few days or in a few weeks after that, say, hey, I actually tried what you told me and I did it, and it worked really well, right? It became easier to work. It became, the quality improved. So report back on the success that you achieved because of the feedback they gave you, okay? And be tangible, right? Be kind of specific there. And then you kind of de facto demonstrating them they helped you a lot and you appreciate their help. And that by itself sometimes also can kind of snap them out of that negativity and say, yeah, that was my intention. That's what I wanted. I wanted you to grow. I wanted you to kind of develop faster, etc., etc. So in a way, it just softens the negativity. They see you not as an enemy, but they see that you actually listen to them and appreciate their help. And then with that, they actually become less likely to be negative about you next time, and then become more supportive and more kind of more mentor coach mindset rather than critical person. The third one is actually quite difficult to achieve, I have to say. One impressive win, one like really truly impressive thing that you do can actually change the whole dynamic of that relationship. If you manage to truly impress your manager, and then they feel that emotion of surprise and being really impressed by your thinking, by your work, by your effort, by your kind of desire to contribute, sometimes that by itself can make situation better, at least neutralize it, make it not positive, but make it neutral, okay? But realistically, it's really hard to do, right? And in my experience, it happened once when I found some kind of impressive thing to do for the client, and client really appreciated it, and then kind of managers also had to also appreciate it because client and partners were impressed, right? And then that made the whole thing neutral, and then it saved my case at the end, right? It wasn't a negative, it became like average case at the end, right? But it's very hard to do. I admit it requires certain things to be in place for you, the way you work, the way you think, the way you problem solve, but also you are in the moment because you're spiraling and you are being so tightly micromanaged. By itself, it's kind of very difficult to do, and also mindset-wise, because you're inconfident, because your motivation is low, it's also not very conducive for that impressive wins, I would say. But that option exists. So if you find yourself in a very desperate situation, you don't know what to do, I suggest you to look at everything that you have on your plate, right? And then find one single thing, one biggest problem. If you solve it, and if you solve it really, really well, it can change the whole situation, right? Sometimes you will see these opportunities, but I also appreciate that it's very hard to do. And the final one is a nuclear option. And we need to be careful with this option. I sometimes use that in my situations. So the way it works is the following, right? So if your manager becomes super abusive, like cross the line, right? Behave in non-professional way, swears at you, screams at you, it's just unbearable, right? And then you think, okay, with this person, relationship is so sour, it's so destroyed, we will never be friends. It's not possible. We will never have positive relationship. I'm happy in this situation, just settle for neutral, respective relationship, and I will never achieve something great, some friendly relationship. That's fine. I'm happy with that. I'm happy to settle for respective one, right? So if you have that discussion with yourself and you agree on that, then the moment that person crosses the line and does something really unacceptable, in that moment you need to catch that person and then say something like that. Hey, why you're speaking with me this way? I don't appreciate this tone. Let's be professional. Okay? And then if you say it in a very calm but very firm way, without adding your emotion to that, it will be like such a huge hit for the person, for your manager. It will immediately snap them out from that situation, and then next time they will be thinking twice before they are lashing out at you, right? It works really, really well. It's very effective. The only trick here is do it in a very calm way. And I know it's very hard because you are emotional in that situation. You also feel vulnerable. And it takes a bit of practice, to be honest, right? So sometimes you will not do it very well. And then over time, you practice, and then you can execute it actually in the best way, okay? It actually happened to me in my last year at McKinsey when I was already an AP, and then a partner with whom we hadn't the best relationship, right? And I knew that we wouldn't be good friends. He said to me, hey, something like I made a joke, right? Some inappropriate joke. I don't remember what was that. And then I said, hey, Jim, I don't appreciate the way you speak with me. I don't appreciate this type of jokes. Can we be professional here? Okay. I was an AP, he was a partner. For me, that was a big kind of thing. But by that time, I already went through so many difficult situations. So I actually was able to make it very calm, not confrontational, not aggressive, but actually show the boundaries, show the personal boundaries. Okay. And then, of course, he reacted, apologized, and then he said he will not do it again, etc., etc. But he never joked around me. Of course, that didn't improve our relationship, but at least I was a little bit in a more positive environment or neutral environment rather than being joked all the time. And one thing that I wanted to kind of mention is one of the last points is we touched on that a little bit throughout the conversation, but I wanted to stress it out because it's a very important one. If you are in the middle of the conflict, if your mind in the conflict, and you are reacting, like negatively reacting to what is happening to you, you cannot win in this situation. So it feels like two big objects move on a colliding courses with a very high speed, right? So there is no way you are not conflicting. Or it feels like two black holes are spinning around each other, and they're spinning faster and faster, and at some point they will collide, right? So that's what that relationship feels. Because you are reacting, they are reacting, they now see that you are not coachable, or you are not listening to them, they become even more agitated, more negative, etc., etc. So once you are staying in this conflict, you cannot solve it. Okay, there will be no positive outcomes for you. You trying to prove wrong to your manager is not possible. It will not yield anything good for you, right? So it's like a lose-lose game for you. Either you lose in any way, so there is no winning upside scenario for you. Okay, so because of the position, because of they are more senior and they have more influence and more power over you. So that's why it's you who needs to kind of find a way to solve it in a peaceful way. Okay, so that's why I need you to elevate yourself above the situation. Look at it kind of from kind of neutral point of view, And then recognize both sides. You understand their side, okay? You understand your side as well. And then you say, okay, if I'm completely objective, if I'm completely honest, yes, my performance was not that great. Yeah, I made mistakes. I am not that great. You also understand the position of that person. They are going through a lot of stress. They sometimes overreacted where they shouldn't have, but that's human nature, that's human emotion, right? So you just become a little bit more neutral, and then you start seeing the situation. And then once you do that, you start seeing solutions. Okay, sometimes you can speak with with that person in a little bit more neutral way, recognizing your own shortcomings and also understanding their challenges, right? But proving anyone wrong is not the right way to solve that. It's not possible. Okay, so very important point I wanted to make. Otherwise, I see a lot of people, even like we work in the coaching program, they try to explain to me why their managers are wrong, and I don't want to listen to that, because I know it's not important. It's not important. It's not solving the problem. It's just kind of exacerbating the problem. The conversation should be about how we can elevate ourselves, how we can find common ground, how we can find common language with this person, not blaming anyone. And the final one, I think better, of course, if you prevent the situation from happening, and then you don't find yourself in this situation at all, because that's not great situation. That actually poisons your life, and then after one or two projects like that, that's when people leave the firm. The best way to do it is through improving your performance. Okay, because remember the underlying reasons, and in most of the cases for consultants, especially for first-year consultants, it's a performance that triggers that kind of reaction. And then if you actually observe, sometimes you can see the same managers who are toxic to you are quite positive to other people, right? It feels unfair for you in the moment. Why they are treating me unfairly, and then treating other people fairly, or even sometimes with a positive bias. But often it's a performance issue, right? The way they see your performance, they perceive it. So improving your performance, specifically upgrading your problem solving, becomes a high priority for you in the first few months, because that's how you also prevent yourself or kind of protect yourself from these situations. Okay, extremely important. So there is a certain level of performance above which you will almost never find yourself in negative, toxic situations. Okay, because even the most toxic, the most negative, the most poor people leaders will still appreciate your work, see that, recognize it, and then they will not be as toxic as to underperforming person. Okay, so that's your best protection from that situation. And final point, if you want to get help to improve to that level, to actually improve your performance, improve the way you work, improve your consulting skills, so you actually not just being protected from toxicity, but also you're being loved by your partners, and they have positive bias towards you. So they see everything you do as a positive thing. That's possible. And that's what I do in my coaching program. That's what I help my clients to get. Okay, so if that's what you want, I encourage you to book a consultation call with me. We will discuss your current challenges, we'll discuss your aspirations, and then we determine together if my coaching program is a great fit for you. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.